students. We will be now discussing about the abolition of slavery as per your NCERT book. One of the most revolutionary social reforms of Jacobin regime was the abolition of slavery in the French colonies. The colonies in the Caribbean, Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Saint Domingo were important suppliers of commodities such as tobacco, indigo, sugar, and coffee. But the reluctance of Europeans to go and work in distant and unfamiliar lands meant a shortage of labor on the plantations. So this was met by a triangular slave trade between Europe, Africa, and America. I repeat, this slave trade between Europe, Africa, and America, which means both North and South America, was known as triangular slave trade. The slave trade began in the 17th century. French merchants sailed from the ports of Bordeaux or Nantes to the African coast, where they bought slaves from local chieftains. Branded and shackled, the slaves were packed tightly into ships for the 3 months long voyage across the Atlantic to the Caribbean. They were sold to plantation owners. The exploitation of slave labor made it possible to meet the growing demand in European markets for sugar, coffee, and indigo. Port cities like Bordeaux and Nantes owned their economic prosperity in the flourishing slave trade. You have to also know that the National Assembly had long debates about whether the rights of man should be extended to all French subjects, including those in the colonies whose income depended on the slave trade. It was finally the convention which in 1794 legislated to free all slaves in the French overseas possessions. This, however, turned out to be a short-term measure. 10 years later, Napoleon introduced slavery. Plantation owners understood their freedom as including the rights to enslave African Negroes. Who were these Negroes? The Negroes, it was a term used for the indigenous people of Africa south of the Sahara. It is a derogatory term not in common use any longer. So these African Negroes, in pursuit of their economic interests, slavery was finally abolished in French colonies in 1848.